Welcome to the HESI A2 Learn As You Go Test 2 Anatomy and Physiology. My name is Kelly Hansen. I'm a registered nurse, and we're going to walk through this together. So let's just go ahead and get right started. Question number 1. Which of the following represents the correct order of hormonal gene activation? Got 4 choices here. First one, the hormone binds to a receptor located on the cell membrane. Second choice, the hormone binds to a receptor protein, which then activates an enzyme. Third, the hormone enters the nucleus to form a hormone receptor complex, followed by transcription. And then last, the hormone enters the nucleus to form a hormone receptor complex, followed by translation. Okay, just quickly, we know that transcription has to come before translation, so we're going to go ahead and select this one. It gives us our rationale here. We are correct. After the hormone receptor complex is formed, it binds to the DNA within the cell. And then transcription of the mRNA in the nucleus will take place. And as we said, this is then followed by the translation of mRNA in the cytoplasm. So choice A is not correct because it refers to the first step of that second messenger system. And then choice B is incorrect because it refers to the second and third steps. And then choice D is incorrect because it talks about the translation preceding the transcription. And we know transcription has to come first. All right, question number 2. What is a hormone that is produced from a polyunsaturated hydrocarbon chain, or a lipid, called? We've got testosterone, prostaglandin, peptide, and estrogen. Okay, so our answer here is actually prostaglandin because testosterone, this is a male sex hormone, and it also originates from a cholesterol. And then we have the peptides, and these are actually amino acid chains. So they're not a polyunsaturated hydrocarbon. And then estrogen, similar to the testosterone, this is a female sex hormone and also originates from that structure similar to a cholesterol. Okay, moving on to question number 3. Which of the following explains the main reason for the structural differences between the left and the right ventricles? Okay, now you have to pull your knowledge of the right and left side of the heart. Where do they go? What do they do? So if we remember correctly, that right side is going to go out to the pulmonary system, and then the left side is going systemically. So it's going all the way around, down to your toes, all the things. So the left side, it has to be much more powerful in order to be able to pump that blood over a much longer pathway. So that makes choice number 4 to be our correct answer. That systemic one, it's also pumping that oxygen-rich blood versus on the right side, it's pumping that oxygen-depleted blood out to the lungs so it can get more oxygen back. All right, question number 4. From innermost to outermost, the heart wall is made up of which of the following? Okay, so we have epicardium, myocardium, endocardium. Endocardium, myocardium, epicardium. And then we have fibrous pericardium, pericardial cavity, and epicardium. And then last but not least, epicardium, pericardial cavity, and fibrous pericardium. Okay, we already know that these 2 choices are not referring to the actual heart wall itself. They actually will encase the entire heart and the vessels in the chest there. So we're looking between these 2. We know that epi means upon or outer, myo means muscle, and endo means within. So if we're starting from our innermost, we want to go from the endo, which is the very inside part of the heart, moving through the muscle tissue of the heart to the outer layer of the heart. So that makes choice number 2 to be our correct answer. And here it further shows you endo is internal or within, epi means over. And so the term endocardium, that's our most inner one, and epicardium is our most outer layer. Okay, question number 5. Which of the following is the correct order of blood flow in the circulatory system from the blood capillary beds of the lungs? All right, so we're starting where they just became oxygenated, and from there we know it has to go back to the left side of the heart. So what takes oxygenated blood back to the heart? Veins always go back to the heart. Arteries go away from the heart. So we know it's not going to be anything with arteries. So that leaves us with our pulmonary veins, our left atrium, which that makes sense because it's going to go into our left side. so that it can then be pumped out. We just talked about with that strong left ventricle to get it out to the systemic circuit. And then after you've had that oxygen carbon dioxide exchange down in all the tissues, it'll then be pumped back to the right atrium so that it can go back out through the pulmonary arteries to the lungs to get more of that oxygen. What is the main difference between arteries and veins? So we kind of just talked about this real quick. Arteries, arteries start with A, away starts with A, arteries go away from the heart, veins go towards the heart. There's only one time when arteries are going to take deoxygenated blood away from the heart, and that's when it's going through the pulmonary arteries to the lungs. And there's only one time when veins are going to take oxygenated blood back to the heart, and that's through the pulmonary veins when it's coming back from the lungs with that oxygen-rich blood. So, veins carry oxygen-rich blood away from the heart to the body? Nope, we just talked about that. That is not the one time. Veins carry oxygen-rich blood away from the heart to the body? Nope. Arteries carry oxygen-rich blood away from the heart to the body. That is correct. Veins carry oxygen-deficient blood from the body's tissue back to the heart via the vena cava. Got a superior and inferior vena cava, and those are the two main that collect all that deoxygenated blood, so that looks correct. Double check down here. Arteries carry oxygen-rich blood away from the heart to the body. Correct. Veins carry oxygen-deficient blood from the body's tissues. Correct. Back to the heart via the aorta. Not correct. Aorta is the largest artery you have in your body, and that, obviously, since it's an artery, is taking blood away from, and that's oxygenated. So that is incorrect. Making choice 3 our answer. Okay, question number 7. Which of the following organs of the respiratory system contains the alveoli? So here you kind of have to use your basic knowledge of the respiratory system. It's going to come in through your nose, go down through your pharynx, down to the larynx, through the trachea, down to the bronchi, bronchioles, and then down into the alveoli. And the bronchioles and the alveoli are located down in your lungs. And this, again, the alveoli, this is where you have that oxygen and carbon dioxide exchange. Super important. You can have everything else intact in your respiratory system, but if your alveoli don't work properly, you cannot get any more oxygen. Question number 8. Air passes and channels through several organs of the respiratory system. Which of the following organs provide the best initial defense against bacteria or debris found in the air? Okay, so I think our key word here is going to be initial. So when we're looking at these options, let's see what would be the initial defense. First choice here, respiratory mucosa within the nostrils can moisten the air to trap dust and destroy bacteria. Yes. The mucosa in the oral cavity can moisten the air to trap dust and destroy bacteria. Probably not so much. Oropharynx can moisten the air and trap foreign debris while destroying bacteria. Yes, but it's not really our initial defense. Remember, we talked about first it comes in through the nose, and then we have the ciliated mucosa in the trachea can trap dust. Well, trachea, we've already gone through quite a few other structures first, so that would not be our initial defense. So we're going to choose choice letter A, and this is within your nose. You've got those goblet cells and mucus glands. They do moisten that air. They do help you to be able to trap that bacteria and dust, so you can sneeze it out, blow it out, get rid of that bacteria. Question number 9. What is the correct order of air passage in regard to the respiratory organs? This we talked about in the very beginning there. So we need to start with our nasal cavity. It's going to come in through your nose first. And then we talked next, it goes through your pharynx, fancy way of saying throat. Then your larynx, which is your voice box. So far we're correct. Then down to your trachea, which is like that bridge from your upper respiratory, starting your lower respiratory. Then you've got bronchi, those branches that go right and left into each lung. And then you've got your bronchioles, which then end in your alveoli. So looking at these choices, your very first one looks correct. Next one was the nasal cavity, pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchioles, bronchi, and alveoli. These two are switched here. The bronchi and bronchioles are in the opposite order. Then you've got the nasal cavity, larynx, pharynx, trachea, bronchi, bronchioles, and alveoli. Here you've got your larynx and your pharynx are in the wrong order. They need to switch. And then last, you have the nasal cavity, larynx, pharynx, trachea, bronchioles, bronchi, and alveoli. Here you got a couple things. These two need to switch, and these two would need to switch. So our first choice that we read was correct. Question number 10. Alveoli walls contain a single thin layer of tissue that is covered with the capillary walls, together with elastic fibers to form a fused basement membrane called the respiratory membrane. The membrane allows gas exchange by simple diffusion. The alveoli walls are most likely what type of epithelial tissue? And our answer here is going to be our simple squamous epithelial tissue. And that's because choice letter A here, this is the one that's found mostly in your salivary glands, your pancreas, some of your the surface of your ovaries, and then the tubules of your kidneys. And then choice B here, this one is found in the walls of the stomach and your digestive tract. And then D, this is usually your urinary bladder and then parts of your urethra. All right, question number 11. The intrinsic nerve plexuses are found in which of the following tissue layers? The serosa, mucosa, the visceral peritoneum, and the submucosa. We are going to choose the last option here, and then it's going to give us the explanation. The submucosa, this has got all the different nerve endings, blood vessels, lymphatic vessels, lymphoid tissue, and this is one of the two nerve fibers within the alimentary canal walls. We've got the other myenteric nerve plexus. This is the other nerve type that's found on or within the muscularis external. And then we've got choice A here. That was our serosa. This is incorrect because this is the outermost layer of the wall. And then the mucosa, this is incorrect. It is the innermost layer and mucous membrane that lines the lumen of an organ. And then the visceral peritoneum, this is incorrect. It is part of the serosa and is made up of a single layer of flat cells that produce a serous fluid. Question number 12. The gastric pits contain specific cells that release chemicals responsible for the stimulation or initiation of emptying the stomach. What are these cells called? Enteroendocrine cells, mucous neck cells, parietal cells, or chief cells? And we're going to choose our first option here. Enteroendocrine cells. These produce gastrin, and this is vital for regulating your digestive activities in the stomach. Once food's in the stomach, that gastrin is released, and it stimulates the release of gastric juices and that stomach emptying. This mucous neck cells, this is incorrect. These cells produce a thin, acidic, low pH mucus that contains mucin proteins. The mucus has an unknown function that is different from the secretion of mucus cells from the mucosa. And then the parietal cells, this one is incorrect because these ones produce a corrosive acid called hydrochloric acid. And this makes it for a very acidic environment in the stomach and activates enzymes. This takes your pepsinogen and converts it to pepsin, which helps with the digestion there. And then chief cells, this is incorrect because these are responsible for producing inactive protein digesting enzymes called pepsinogens. Question number 13. Intrinsic factors are needed for the absorption of vitamin B12 in the small intestine. These substances are glycoproteins that are secreted in which part of the alimentary canal? So we've got our large intestine, the small intestine, the stomach, and the esophagus. And the correct answer for this is the stomach. So you've got very specific cells called parietal cells, and they're the ones that create that intrinsic factor, and that's what's important to help with the absorption of that vitamin B12. Now, we know that the absorption occurs in the small intestine, but without these cells, we're unable to sufficiently absorb that vitamin B12 in the small intestines. We have A, B, and D. These do not contain those parietal cells, which produce that intrinsic factor that's required for the absorption. So that's why these other options are not correct. Question 14. Most nutrient absorption occurs in which alimentary organ? Kind of just hinted at this one with the last question. We have the small intestine, we have the stomach, we have the large intestine, and then we have the fundus. So small intestine is what we're going to choose. We just talked about this with the absorption of the vitamin B12 in the previous question. It has the most surface area, and it's got all these little villi that are in there to help absorb all of the different nutrients. So that one is where most of the absorption occurs. You've got the stomach, which helps to break down the food, and it helps to, it has cells in there that help with absorption, but the most absorption does not occur in the stomach. And then we have the large intestine. This basically gets rid of all of your indigestible food, and it does absorb water, but not nutrients, not as much nutrients as your small intestine. And then choice D, this is the fundus. This just refers to the upper region of the stomach, so this really isn't an area that most nutrient absorption occurs. Question number 15. If the parietal cells were unable to secrete substances into the gastric gland, which of the following scenarios would occur? So we have our first choice here. Pepsin would not convert to pepsinogen, resulting in the digestion of dietary proteins. Second choice, pepsinogen would not convert to pepsin, resulting in the indigestion of dietary proteins. Third choice, pepsin would convert to pepsinogen, resulting in the indigestion of dietary proteins. And last, pepsinogen would convert to pepsin, resulting in the indigestion of dietary proteins. Okay, there's a lot of words, so make sure you read them through and get them in the correct order. So if our parietal cells were unable to secrete substances into the gastric gland, which of the scenarios? We're going to choose choice number 2 there. These parietal cells, they secrete that hydrochloric acid there, and making it so that pepsinogen would not be converted to pepsin. So if it's not converted to pepsin, we are not going to be able to digest correctly those dietary proteins. Choice A there is not incorrect, because indigestion can still occur if pepsin is not produced, and this is saying that you can digest it. And then choice C here is incorrect because pepsin does not convert to pepsinogen readily. And choice D here is not correct because pepsin would result in the digestion, not indigestion. So if it's able to convert, it is going to digest. In this case, it's saying it converts and then does not digest. So our second choice here is our correct answer. Question number 16. Which muscle component controls the flow of chyme into the small intestine? So chyme is all of the food and enzymes and everything all mixing up into your stomach, or it's all in your stomach. So our choices are the villi, which are in the small intestine, the pylorus, the muscularis externa, and the pyloric sphincter. So you need to remember your anatomy here. Your pyloric sphincter is what opens and closes to allow the flow of chyme to go down into the small intestine. So that is our correct answer. Your villi, these are all already in the small intestine, so they're not going to control that flow. And your pylorus, this is the opening of the stomach that connects to the small intestine, but it is not the sphincter that goes ahead and opens and closes, so that makes that one incorrect. And then this just refers to the types of muscle layers found in the stomach, not necessarily what's going to open and close or control that flow of the chyme. All right, question number 17. The diagram below shows the gross internal anatomy of the stomach. Which of the following labels represents the oblique layer of the stomach? So here you have to have kind of a knowledge of the different layers of the stomach. And for this question, we are going to choose fourth choice there. And it just shows you all the different layers. We want the most internal layer there, which is represented by your Roman numeral number 4. Question number 18 we're at. Gastric cancer is one of the main causes of cancer-related deaths and second most deadly cancer throughout the world. Specific cells within the stomach are believed to play a vital role in cancer initiation. These cells have been known to regulate tissue repair and renewal. What are these cells called? So we have our chief cells, our stem cells, parietal cells, and the enteroendocrine cells. Well, we know our stem cells are the ones that renew and repair, so we're going to go ahead and choose those. Chief cells are incorrect. These are responsible for producing that protein digesting enzyme called pepsinogen. And then our C, those are our parietal cells. Those are for our hydrochloric acid that we talked about a little bit earlier. And then choice D here is the enteroendocrine cells, and these are for the production of local hormones. So those are not correct for the repair and renewal. Question number 19. What are the three regions of the kidney from the most superficial aspect of the kidneys to the ureter? So we want to go from the most outer portion of the kidney moving inward to the ureter. So we have the pelvis, medulla, and cortex. We have our fibrous capsule, perirenal fat capsule, and our renal fascia. And we have the cortex, medulla, and pelvis, the renal fascia, perirenal fat capsule, and fibrous capsule. All right, and our correct answer in this case is the cortex, which is your outer, moving into your medulla, and then into your pelvis, which then can go to the ureter. Those are your three main aspects of your kidney there. These are in reverse, not going, starting from superficial, going to the ureter. And then B and D, this option and this option, these are referring to the protective layers of the kidney, not moving in the correct direction, going from the superficial aspect to the ureter. All right, question number 20. A patient visiting a medical clinic tells the doctor that he's been having problems urinating. The doctor notices that the patient has lost a significant amount of weight since he last visited. The doctor most likely suspects the patient is suffering from hydronephrosis. Which of the following describes this condition? So got first choice here is the fibrous capsule dwindles, causing pressure to build on the kidney tissue. Second one is the fat capsule dwindles, causing the ureters to become kinked. Third is the renal fascia dwindles, causing pressure to build on the kidney tissue. And last is the renal pelvis dwindles, causing the ureters to become kinked. Okay, so in this case, the important piece here is the doctor notices that the patient has lost a significant amount of weight since he last visited. So we're going to choose our second option here. When patients lose that fat capsule around their kidneys, it can cause your kidneys to shift downward, and then it can cause your ureters to become kinked. And that's why the second option here is our correct answer. A, C, and D are incorrect because that fibrous capsule, the renal fascia, and the renal pelvis are not fatty masses, so that wouldn't have anything to do with his weight loss. All right, question number 21. The diagram below illustrates several regions of the nephron. Which of the following labels correspond to a region that protrudes into the renal medulla? You got your 4 Roman numeral here. You got 1, 2, 3, and 4. And we are going to go with our third option, or number 1. And that's your loop of Henle. And this one, also called the nephron loop, this one it descends down into, as the question was asking, it protrudes into the renal medulla. And then choice A is incorrect because it refers to the distal convoluted tubule that's located within the renal cortex and is connected to the ascending portion of the loop of Henle, so it does not protrude down. And even if you look into this picture, you can see how this part would be the one that would protrude down into the renal medulla. All right, question number 22. Which of the following represents the correct direction of blood flow within the renal blood vessels? Okay, so we're going to start off assuming that we're coming from the heart into the kidney as our correct blood flow. Let's take a look at our options first. We have our renal vein, arcuate vein, arcuate artery, and then a renal artery. Then you have your interlobular vein, cortical radiate vein, afferent arteriole, and cortical radiate artery. Then interlobular artery, cortical radiate artery, cortical radiate vein, and efferent arteriole, renal artery, arcuate vein, and renal vein. So if we're talking about the blood flow coming into the kidney, we know that it has to be arteries if it's coming into the kidney, and therefore we're going to choose our renal artery to our arcuate artery. Then the kidney receives and exchanges the oxygen and carbon dioxide, which then will turn around and go to the arcuate vein, renal vein, and then back to the heart. Let's double check ourselves. Arteries carry that oxygenated blood, as we talked about before, and then the veins carry that deoxygenated blood. Choice A is incorrect because we've flipped that. Remember, veins are not carrying oxygenated in this case. And then choice B is incorrect because our vein, again, does not carry the oxygenated blood. And then C is incorrect because the blood flows into the afferent arteriole before it reaches the cortical radiate vein. Question number 23. During a vasectomy, a surgeon makes a small incision in the scrotum and ties which of the following accessory organs? You have first choice the ejaculatory duct, the ductus deferens, the ampulla of ductus deferens, and the prostatic urethra. We're going to choose our second option here. The portion of the vas deferens lies within the scrotum. Vasectomy means cutting the vas. In the vasectomy procedure, there's that small incision that's made to cut that vas deferens. In choice A and choice D, these are incorrect and close to one another. Surgery at this site would be really invasive. It's not something that we would want to do, particularly outpatient, and you could end up with urination problems with cutting both of these two. And then choice C here, this is incorrect, also invasive and potential leading to other complications. So that makes choice number 2 there our option. Question number 24. In the female duct system, there is no contact between the ovaries and the uterine tubes. What specific part of the uterine tube helps carry the oocyte towards the uterus? You have your fimbriae, the infundibulum, the cilia, and then the broad ligaments. Based on our knowledge of female reproduction, the fimbriae, those are those finger-like productions that they help to carry that egg from the fallopian tubes towards, or at the end of the fallopian tubes, from the ovaries into the uterus. Choice B is incorrect. This is just the funnel-shaped cavity where the oocyte will pass to move towards the uterus. They're not the ones that help carry it along. Choice C, these are usually found in the oviduct or the fallopian tubes. These protect and cover the egg as it moves through the fallopian tube. And then choice D, those are just the ligaments that kind of help hold that uterus to the pelvic wall and just provide structure. It doesn't really help to move that egg along. So choice A, or the first choice there, was our correct answer. Question 25. The appearance of the follicular antrum signals which of the following developmental stages? First choice, formation of the primary follicle called the vesicular follicle. Choice, the second one here, formation of the ruptured follicle called the corpus luteum. Third choice, formation of the corpus luteum following ovulation. And the last but not least, formation of the secondary follicle called the vesicular follicle. And we're going to go ahead and choose that one. Okay. Our answer here, the antrum is the part of the ovarian follicle that contains that follicular fluid. When this antrum appears, it signals the next stage of the maturation and formation of the secondary follicle called the mature vesicular follicle. So choice A is not correct because that primary follicle does not have an antrum. And then choice B is incorrect because once that follicle ruptures, the antrum is no longer present. And then C is incorrect because the corpus luteum does not contain an antrum. Question number 26. Considering the structure of sperm, where are the mitochondria and DNA located respectively? First choice, the head and the midpiece. Second is the head and tail. Third is the midpiece and the head. And then last is the tail and the head. Okay, so we want to make sure we're matching these up correctly. So which one would be mitochondria first? And for mitochondria, we are going to choose the midpiece, and then for DNA, we're going to choose the head. Let's double check ourselves. Right. Reason being is that the DNA is located in the head, so that's the important reason for why you need to make sure you're matching it up correctly. They wanted mitochondria first and then DNA, so that made these two wrong because DNA is located in the head, not the mitochondria. And then last but not least is it would not be suitable to have the mitochondria in the tail based on the way that the sperm move, so that makes our third option here as the correct option. Question 27. Which of the following labels corresponds to the peritoneal cavity? And you've got your 4 Roman numerals here. You kind of have to go off of your knowledge of anatomy of the structures there, the female reproductive organs. And so we're going to choose the third one, and it'll tell us the rationale there. But if you take a look, we have, this is the vaginal cavity, the uterine cavity, and then option number 4, which would be the second one there, choice B. This is just the round ligaments that help to hold that uterus in place, whereas Roman numeral number 3, or your first option here, that is your whole peritoneal cavity itself. Question number 28. A woman's anatomy is more vulnerable to infection for several reasons. For example, a woman's vagina is covered by a thin and more delicate mucous membrane that allows bacteria and viruses to pass through more readily. Which of the following is another reason why women are at a higher risk for infections spreading within the reproductive tract? All right, so something that makes it higher risk for infections in the reproductive tract. First choice. Contact between the uterine tube and ovaries causes infections to spread more readily into the peritoneum cavity. No, there's not really. We have those fimbriae that help to connect the uterine tubes and the ovaries, but nothing really specifically contacts. Contact between the uterine tube and ovaries is minimal, causing infections to spread more easily into the peritoneal cavity. Contact between the fimbriae and the ovaries is minimal. There's our fimbriae again, that's the one that helps move the egg along, causing infections to spread more readily into the peritoneal cavity. That would be correct. And contact between the infundibulum and ovaries causes infections to spread more readily into the peritoneal cavity. Let's go ahead and choose option number 3. We are correct. The fimbriae is what is the closest connecting between those ovaries and that uterus. That makes this one correct. Choices A and B are incorrect because those uterine tubes do not directly connect to those ovaries. And then D is incorrect because the infundibulum and ovaries are not directly connected. Again, that fimbriae is really that bridge there that goes between those ovaries and that uterus. Question number 29. The diagram below illustrates the frontal view of the male reproductive organ and accessory glands. The following choices represent several accessory glands and organs. Which choice does not contribute to the composition of semen? Again, you have your 4 Roman numerals here that you can choose from. You have to refer back to your knowledge of the anatomy. And we're going to go ahead and just choose number 2, located right there. Number 2, which is one we chose, this is the ampulla of the ductus deferens. This is an enlarged and terminal section of the ductus deferens, and it acts as a reservoir for sperm. So this is the one place that does not contribute to the production and composition of semen, whereas all the rest of them do. You have the seminal vesicle, that was choice C, so number 3 right there. And then you also have the bulbourethral glands, and those are number 4 right there. And then the other option that we had is choice A, because that is your prostate itself, which also contributes to the production. Last but not least, number 30. For the most part, the glands, ducts, and organs found within the male and female systems have similar functions. Which of the following does not have a reproductive role? So we have the testes and the ovaries, the bubble urethra and greater vestibular glands, the gonads in men and women, and then the male and female urethra. Okay, testes and ovaries. These are the basic parts. We need those for reproduction. This creates the sperm, this creates the egg, so we know this one is not correct. We have the bubble urethra and greater vestibular glands. We just talked about those in the previous question. Both of those are responsible for helping to create semen, which is required for reproduction, so it's not this one. The gonads in men and women, that's just another way to say the testes and ovaries, so we know that this one is not correct. So let's go ahead and choose the urethra, which both men and women have urethra, but that's part of the urinary system for secreting and being able to release urine. So those do not have anything really related to do with reproduction. Obviously, sperm does travel through the male urethra, but it's not super important. It's not the part that contributes towards reproduction. Take a look at how we did, finish our quiz. And we got 100. I hope that you found this to be helpful. As always, go ahead and leave us some comments, questions, and anything else that you may have down in the bottom. And thank you for watching.